question I get asked a lot is, hey, Azul, how do I start saving real money in my retirement accounts and start moving the needle towards my goals? And please don't tell me to cut out my Starbucks coffee. And I promise I'm not going to go there. Let's go for a walk, and I'll talk about the main areas that I think how you can really move the needle. And I'm going to be brutally honest here, and it's almost like that, a few good men. Can you handle the truth? I hope I don't offend anybody here, but I'm sharing things that, I've been working in the industry for 20 years, and these are the things that I've seen people do that really move the needle, and I hope they help you as well. Okay, so really what I think you need to do is you need to look at your expenses and what are the large expenses, right? And that's where I think you need to start. Don't start with the $5 Starbucks coffee. And for most Americans, our housing costs is our largest expense. It's just under $2,000 a month for most Americans, followed by our car payments and really transportation, car payment, insurance, gasoline, car repair, stuff like that, all lumped into transportation. And we actually spend more money on transportation than we do on food, which surprises a lot of people. So that's $900 a month for the average American. And then food comes in at about $700 or $800 for the average American. So, I like to start with the big ticket items. And, on the housing side of things, if you're renting, to the extent you can put yourself in a situation where in the next couple of years you can buy a house. And I know that's easier said than done, but that can be a real powerful needle mover for you. I think a lot of Americans over the last 20 years, if somebody sold their house, they've been in their house for 20 years. If they sold in the last 5 years, they probably lived in the house for free when you think about what the appreciation was on the real estate. I owned my house for just over 15 years. I was lucky and I was unlucky. I bought it right at the peak of the 2006 high. And then, of course, it dropped in price by about 20%. But, I wasn't a seller. I had bought that house for my family to live in, to raise our kids, for our kids to go to school, and the schools nearby, things like that. So, I think that's still true. Yes, real estate's had a really nice run here recently. And could it pull back? Absolutely. I think in many areas it already has pulled back a little bit. But to the extent you can get yourself in a situation where you own your house, if you're going to stay in it, I think at least 7 years. If I had needed to sell my house for the first 5 years, I would have lost money on my house, right? It would have been a very expensive investment. But I was planning on, until my kids got out of high school, keeping that house, which is what it worked out. We were in that house for a little over 15 years. And frankly, it took probably 12 years for the house to appreciate 50%. And then in the next 3 years, it doubled. It's good to be smart, but it's better to be lucky. And when it comes to real estate, I don't claim to be smart at all. I was looking for a home for my family. But from a savings standpoint, look at the big ticket items. And is there anything you can do if you're not an owner to put yourself in a situation where you're an owner? Or if you're renting, is there a way you can pay less? Is there, a neighborhood a block away? It's a pain to move, and landlords know that. But if you're willing to move, sometimes you can get a much better deal. So first place to look, I think, is with housing, and the best way to move the needle there is with if you somehow can figure out a way to own versus rent. Next place I think is really ripe for saving. So though a lot of people aren't going to like me here, this is the doctor telling you, I can put you on statins for high cholesterol, or you could go vegan, and vegan would be better for your cholesterol. Most Americans want to take a pill. And so this one's going to be charged with controversy as well. So please be kind in the comments. And the next one's even going to be worse, but car payments. So average American spends $1,900 a month on housing. Average American spends $900 a month on transportation, which would be your car payments, your insurance, your car repairs, gasoline, things like that. So that's another area that's ripe for savings. And I think you can save there without it feeling sacrificial, without it feeling like you're giving something up, right? I mean, if you gave up your Starbucks coffee every morning, I think a lot of people that would feel sacrificial. But to buy a used car as opposed to a new car, to hold on to your car for 10 years as opposed to 3 to 5 years, I think a lot of us could do that, right? A lot of us buy a car that just a new car just because that's what our friends do. That's kind of what we assumed we do. How do you even go about buying a used car without going to the dealer and learning all of that? But I can promise you it's a very easy skill to learn. The biggest advice I can give you is have an independent mechanic look at your car before you buy it. I promise you that will be the best $100, $200. Generally, it costs less than $100 to have a mechanic look at a car and just tell you, hey, this car was maintained well, which is really what you want to know, that the previous owner took care of it, or just buy it from somebody that takes care of their cars. Frankly, that's what I've graduated to doing. So again, number one, housing. Number two is car. I think I shared that most Americans spend more on transportation than they do on food, which was kind of surprising to me. But I think, on $900, could you get that down to $500 a month? I think it's in the realm of reason. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's doable, but depending on where you live and what kind of car you need for work, things like that, I think for a lot of us, we could do that and it not be sacrificial. I'd be shocked if my transportation cost is over $500 a month. I don't think it is. I've always bought used cars. So the third one, and it's going to be super controversial. Third one is if you smoke, cigarettes are $10 a pack. A lot of people smoke a pack a day or more. So that's almost $4,000 a year that you can save right there. So, if you can cut out $400 a month from your car payment, take it down from $900 to $500, or I should say total transportation cost, save $400 there a month. So that would end up being, what would that be? Just under $5,000 a year. And then if you can cut out smoking, that would be almost another $4,000 a year right there. So that's $9,000. And the average American makes $1,000 a week. So, on a base of $50,000, that's significant. That's 15 to 20% that you're saving right there. Closer to 15%, I guess you should say. Is it? No, I think it's 15 to 20%. So that allows you to move the needle, and that can make a big difference. And I think it's important to make a big difference because the average family, the average savings account for people that have savings account, the average total is only $70,000. Now, in another video, I'm going to break down what the savings are by age group. But, in general, we don't have that much saved. In fact, and it's not an earnings thing, right? I shared with it. It is an earnings thing. I mean, that's an awfully privileged thing I just said, sorry. It's not just an earnings problem. It's also a savings problem because I don't care how much money you make. If you don't spend less than what you make, you're never going to save money. So if you look at people that make under $50,000 a year, 75% of those folks don't save anything really a year. And that's understandable, right? I mean, that's just what it costs to survive. But of the people that make 50 to 100,000, now in that category, people start to have some money that they could save. 2/3 of people, 63%, don't save any money. Of the people that make $100,000 to $150,000, over 50%, 54% don't save any money. Now it keeps going. Of people that make $150,000 to $200,000, just under half don't save anything, 48%. And of the people that make over $200,000 a year, now that's a category you should be able to save money. Almost a third, a little more than a quarter, 28% don't save any money. And that's according to a survey that was conducted by a group called the Lending Club. So it gives you an idea. Are those numbers rock solid? I'd never heard of the Lending Club before, but it's very interesting information. So I wanted to share it with you. Okay, so the fundamentals here, you have to you have to spend less than what you earn. And that's hard, right? Spending is fun. We like spending money. Uh, and it's not just enough to save. You also have to invest that money. You need that money to grow at a rate faster than inflation, or you know what? You're probably never going to reach your savings and retirement goals. So this is the savings rate by income, according to a 2010-2012 study of distribution of wealth. The top 1%, as you would guess, the top 1% of Americans can save a fair amount of money, right? I mean, they're making big money. And so they're saving about 40%. The top 1% are saving 38%. But the top 1 to 10% is saving 15%. So that's not a whole lot. I mean, if you're not the 1%, but you're the next 9% below that, again, making really nice money, saving only 15%. And then below that, if you're in the bottom 90%, according to this study, that distributional wealth study that I mentioned, they're only saving 1% of what they earn. So if you're not saving money, you have good company, but don't let that be a solace to you. Do what you can to save what you can. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is, so how much should you try to save a year, and how much do you need in order to reach your retirement goals? So, again, can you handle the truth? The truth is, I really think you need to try to save. It's aspirational, I know, but as close to 20% as you can. I know it's super hard to get there. You're not going to get there overnight. But if you do a couple things, one is, if you're just graduating school and you're getting your first quote unquote real job, instead of going from living the lifestyle of a poor student to, living it up and spending all the money you make in your first job. And I know you want to celebrate, I get that. But if you can maybe go halfway in between there, go from a poor student to what you could afford to do, and go halfway in between, you'll still be living high off the hog. A term I learned in Cleveland. I don't know if that's known throughout the U.S. I hope it is. But you'll still be feeling like that was a major upgrade. And then for the rest of us, as we get raises, I want to encourage you. Half of that raise goes to your current self, and half of that raise goes to your future self. And I think over time, you'll begin to start saving more serious money. So how much money do you need to be able to retire? What is the goal that you're shooting for? A lot of people would say you want to have 80% of what you were making before you retired. While you were working, 80% of when you were working. So if you were making $100,000 a year, most people would say, okay, for your retirement to feel comfortable and not sacrificial. Now, this is not financial advice for you. I don't know your specific situation. This is really educational information, all of this that I'm sharing today. And I encourage you to work with somebody that can help you with your specific situation. But I'm just giving you some guidelines here to think about. I do encourage you to find a fee-only financial advisor to work with. You can find one just by Googling that term, fee-only financial advisor. And I suggest the fee-only financial advisor because they have voluntarily agreed to be a fiduciary to their clients 100% of the time. And I think that's critically important. So if you're currently making $100,000 a year, just as an example, and frankly, to give me easy math, people would generally say, okay, $80,000 a year for a lot of people would be a comfortable retirement. But not all of that has to come from your retirement, and you know this. Some of it's going to come from Social Security. The average Social Security payment, according to the Social Security Administration, is $1,550 a month. So let's call that $21,000 a year. Let's say between you and your spouse, the two of you, you get a total of $30,000. So one's going to get a bigger Social Security check than the other. That might not be the case. You might both get the same amount, but let's just call that $30,000. So that means you need $50,000 a year to come from your retirement accounts. And so I have a rule, I call it the rule of 25. It's related to the 4% rule. The inverse of 4% is 25. 1 over 25 is 4%. And I think it's just easier to look at the cash flows you need from your investments and multiply that by 25. So if you need $50,000 a year to come from your investments, then that means you need to have a minimum of $1.25 million. Now, you probably want to have a buffer above that, and you probably don't want to use a rule of thumb to determine how much money you need in retirement, but it gives you a ballpark of what you need. So I'm going to close this video with one last thing, and I know there's a lot of information here. I hope this has been super helpful. This last one is kind of a benchmark of where you should be by your age, so stay tuned. But before we go, I want to encourage you, give me a thumbs up if you found this video to be helpful. It will help other people find this video. And consider leaving me a comment. I do watch the comments, but where should you be by age? Okay. And this is according to a study by Fidelity, and Fidelity is one of the largest custodians of 401ks. So they're kind of the giant in the 401k space. So they have a lot of information on Americans and our savings habits. And from this study, Fidelity says if you're in your 20s to 30s, you should have 1 to 2 times your current salary. This is your gross salary, your total salary, saved. If you're in your 30s to 40, that number now, as you get closer to 40, jumps up to 3 times what your annual salary is, and hopefully your annual salary is increasing every year as well. If you're in your 40s and 50s, that number now jumps from 3 times to 5 times what your current pay is. If you're in your 50s to 60s, now that's going to jump up to 10x. And why is that? That's a big jump, right? But it's basically a doubling every decade, right? So the first decade, 20 to 30, is 1 to 2x. Then that goes to 2 to 3x. And then that goes from your 40s to 50s to 3 to 5x. And then your 50s to 60s, again, that 5x doubles to 10x. And then I would argue, really, you want to have closer to 15x. So I think the Fidelity study is a little too generous. I think you do want to have a buffer, and I think by the time you're 65, you want to have 15x. So not 10x, but 15x. So those are the numbers. Those are the studies. This video's gone a little bit long. Again, if you like the video, do me a favor, leave me a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I do read the comments. And until next time, I'm Azul, encouraging you to take full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, you're only young once. Use your time wisely.